I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to this evening's meeting, this beautiful Tuesday, April 5th. Wonderful weather outside. This is the 7th meeting of the Board of Directors in the year 2022. We'll begin with an invocation by Pastor Jeremy Horton, and I'll lead the pledge. Please rise.
Okay, let's pray. Father, we want to thank you first and foremost just for every breath that you've given us today. And we recognize, Lord, in these moments that our utter dependence is always upon you. It's from you that we find all source of wisdom and counsel and direction, and we submit ourselves to you in that. I pray tonight for the Board of Directors, for every member, for their families, and for blessings upon their households and their needs, and God, even for your direction through what is discussed and visited about tonight. I thank you, God, for the direction that you give us in our life, and above all, we thank you so much that Jesus Christ is your Son, and he died on the cross for our sins and rose from the dead. And tonight our greatest victory is that we can be forgiven, and we praise you for that. We know that the Scripture says that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And we pray you'd be Lord of this meeting and Lord of Hot Springs and Garland County and beyond. And God, may you be praised tonight in everything that's said and done. And I ask these things, Father, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Director Aaron Holliday. Here. Director Elaine Jones.
Here.
Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith.
Here.
Director Carol Weatherford.
Here.
Director Karen Garcia.
Here.
Director Steve Trusty.
Here.
Mayor Pat McCabe.
Here. Director Garcia is joining us and participating via Zoom tonight, so welcome. And at this time, we'll consider approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda or items to be moved from the consent agenda to new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Director Trustee, seconded by Director Weatherford. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. At this time, we'll consider approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of March 15th, 2022. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Director Dobbs-Smith, seconded by Director Jones. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. I have a guest here tonight, Alicia Chapman, who's the Director of Community Health at Levi Hospital, and she's going to talk to you a little bit briefly about the Community Health Survey and how you can participate. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor McCabe and the City Board. I appreciate this opportunity to speak on behalf of Levi Hospital on this evening. Levi Hospital conducts a community health needs assessment every 3 years. And this year makes our 3rd year, and we are excited and very ecstatic about bringing our community health survey to Garland County. The community health needs assessment is an assessment that compromises and gives information to our citizens, our agencies, our organizations to meet the community health needs, their status, and the issues that we may have in our community and beyond. So with our community health needs survey, we disperse these surveys out to various locations. We have the Garland County Library, the Health Department, the Web Center. We also have the Chamber, Levi Hospital, and various stations that we give these organizations the opportunity and the community the opportunity to give their input and feedback. And once we complete this community assessment, we disperse it through the city, And we also make sure that we bring awareness and also bring resources to the city. So we solicit everyone's input with the Community Health Survey. You can find it online at levihospital.com. We have a link that you can go to. And if you desire the paper copies, we also have those as well. If you have any questions, please contact me at Levi Hospital. My name is Alicia Chapman, and we'll be happy to assist you. I thank you for this time and appreciate your service and continue to make Garland County great. Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Chapman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
At this time, we'll hear from Mr. Gary Chalman, President and CEO of Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce and Metro Partnership. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Appreciate the opportunity tonight. Cole McCaskill reported in my stead on March 1st last month, and that night we were in Fayetteville for the Governor's Conference on Tourism, and I know you know, but just want to congratulate again Visit Hot Springs National Park, and Diamond Lakes Travel Association for making a clean sweep of those awards for our community. It was really nice to see them all win. Since we have had a meeting with the new general manager at the Village, Kelly Hale, we've visited with a restaurant chain that is interested in coming to Hot Springs. You are familiar with the Arkansas Business of the Year Awards. We were proud to nominate and subsequently won Vince Signorelli and his business, Tanner's Team Sports, for businesses under 30 employees. Diane LaFollette was also a finalist, and even though they're not here in Hot Springs, we were proud to see Ritter Communications win for a large business award. We hosted a AEDCE regional meeting for all of Southern Arkansas, had 50 attendees from across the state, from Mountain Home and Mountain View to Hamburg. Local presenters were Stephanie Alderdice from 61 Celsius, Dr. Bill Allison from National Park College, and our own Shannon LeDuc. Had our monthly luncheon with City Manager Burrow and County Judge Mahoney, and we hosted a lunch and learn on cryptocurrency, which about 40 folks, and we know just enough to be thoroughly confused on cryptocurrency, but it's an exciting topic as we learn more about it. Attended the first ever draft day event in Jonesboro a couple weeks ago. In that, it was for seniors, for CTE type seniors that are not going to four-year institutions. There were 30 companies there, 26 schools all over Northeast Arkansas. I went very candidly just so we would have the next one here in Hot Springs next spring. It was a fantastic event, and if you'll hold on to that thought for just a minute, I'm going to dovetail that back talking about our event last week. Congratulations to Resort TV Cable press conference they held on broadband, and as you know, they've built out the areas of Diamond Head, have built out Diamond Head, and in the process of building out Piercy and Royal for residential broadband. I was honored to get again this year to get the Welcome to Leadership Arkansas, introduce our friend Eric Jackson, and then team up with Dr. Jack Porter and Mike White presenting ACTI. It's always refreshing to know or to see folks that really don't know just a little bit about it and see their reaction when we talk about the challenges that presents our local community. We had the opening of Armor Bank this past month. Got to visit with Senator Bozeman more about ACTI since we just mentioned that. And now I'll go back to the 11th grade career fair. Michelle did all the work on that, did a tremendous job. We had 30 companies for our only 7 schools plus ASMSA here, 37 booths. And so we feel like we're really poised to host this event next year. The difference there is this is for 11th graders to expose them to their careers and opportunities available here in Hot Springs for the future, whereas the event in Jonesboro was for seniors only. These are kids about to graduate in just a matter of weeks that are looking for a job. They're either ready to go to work in mid-May, or they need to know that they can go to National Park College for 2 years, learn a skill, and then be ready to go to work in 2 more years. So just a great event. I do want to, again, commend Michelle, but I also want to say that as you all can appreciate, Timber Automation, Fiber Pro, Veranda, Express, Radius and Triumph, just to mention a few companies. We had Arkansas Elite Welding Academy down here from Quitman, Arkansas, of all places, but they are a welding academy, and certainly all those companies and more around here need jobs. So we made the connection with them. To those companies. We left that, literally left that fair, jumped in a car, drove to Dallas, and we had the International Council of Shopping Centers conference in Dallas, where we got to recruit several retailers and restaurants there last Thursday. I want to commend Oaklawn, Wayne Smith, Louis Silla, and all those for a wonderful Derby Day, 60,000 in attendance. It was appropriate. Got to visit with Director Holliday this morning, but how appropriate the origami sake was announced the other day at the Cherry Blossom Festival. The only thing that wasn't mentioned in the article is there is potential for that to go mainstream. We've been working with actually Ben Bell and Matt Bell recently, but Ben Bell for about 3 or 4 years, and most of the sake distributors are like vineyards in California. Most of the owners are content to provide wine to, or sake in this case, to friends, neighbors, and just a few acquaintances. So there is potential for this to go on a much larger scale, which obviously we're all excited about. Had the opportunity, Chief Chapman called a meeting yesterday at Arvest with Amos Gray and High Impact Movement, looking for the city and community and business leaders to be more involved in helping Mr. Gray with such a successful program that the chief is very high upon. And you probably saw the announcement yesterday afternoon. I've been talking to you about, we've been trying to get more statewide recognition for Hot Springs. Arkansas businesses 40 under 40, Scott Dews and Quincy Hurst, 2 Hot Springs residents selected among the 40 for 2022. I'll close with this. We've got 2 big events around the corner for springtime that we're very excited about. The Academic Excellence Banquet. We're bringing that back on full scale. 2 years ago, it was merely a drive-through in the warehouse or parking lot because of COVID. We had to do it in increments last year, but we're bringing it back to the convention center on the 14th next week with celebrate 59 the top 5% graduating seniors in Hot Springs and Garland County. And then please mark your calendars on May the 5th. We have our chamber banquet. And again, at Oaklawn, we had 750 attend last year. So this year promises to be another big event. And happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Troutman? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
This time we'll hear from our city manager, Mr. Bill Burrow, for the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we have quite a few things on the agenda tonight, but I do have several things I'd like to share with the board. First, just want to thank all of our public safety employees and all of those that were involved in a couple of huge events that we had since your last meeting. The St. Patrick's Day Parade, which brought thousands of people into our downtown area, as well as the Arkansas Derby at Oaklawn. That puts a lot of additional pressures on our public safety staff, and I thought they did just a phenomenal job at both events, and want to recognize them and thank them. Mayor, I'd like to update the board on some of our water projects that we have going on. Maybe at the next meeting I'll bring you the wastewater projects that we currently have, but really a lot on this report and don't want to mix the two. That was a pun.
Yeah.
But the ground storage tank and painting repairs project, this is all of our ground storage tanks that we have throughout the system. We have finally completed that project, and all the tanks have been retrofitted with internal mixers, and all are back online and doing well. Our 2021 water line replacement, Square One has completed all of the streets except for Greenwood, and it's scheduled to be done mid this month. So the 2021 water line should be completed. What we have for 2022, those are all engineered. We're waiting on Arkansas Department of Health's approval. That bid schedule should be coming out just as soon as we receive that approval. Main Street, those that live in and around the Main Street area, the Main Street water and sewer improvements, that has been approved by the Arkansas Department of Health, and the project bids April 25th with the completion date of January 23. Now, this is a huge project. It's taking water and wastewater lines from Albert Pike all the way to the railroad tracks right before the middle school there. There's about 75 residents that will be impacted by that for both water and sewer. So that's going to be a major project once that starts off. Lake Ouachita, our water supply project, it still is moving through the process and the construction rather well. Contract 2, and remember, any of the contracts with a number are raw water, and any contracts with letters are potable water. But in this particular project, Contract 2 has bid on January the 18th. Belt Construction was the low bidder at $9.2 million, with the project estimate that came in at $11.4. Pre-construction meeting was last week. That start date is going to be June the 13th because of steel pipe delivery dates. We're having a little bit of issue getting the pipe in. But this project is for 21,000 feet of 42-inch steel pipe on the raw water main. It'll be coming from the Ouachita Water Treatment Plant, our current plant, all the way to Lake Hamilton. And then south of Mazarn Creek to Airport Road, coming down Northmore Road. Contract 3 and 5, both McKee and K-Jacks are putting pipe in the ground. They're averaging about 500 to 1,000 feet per week, depending on how much rock is encountered. County roads, Papago Road, Old Bear Road, they're in pretty rough shape, and we'll be helping some of that with the county judge as we come down through those roads. New water treatment plant site, we continue to do work there. The 3 million gallon clear well excavation started this past week with our local subcontractor, John Jenkins. Our general contractor is Nat Gunn, and that contract amount is $4.2 million, but I'm pleased to say that is progressing rather nicely. Moving on to Operation Clean Sweep. This is our first Operation Clean Sweep of 2022. It included approximately 288 address points and ran from March 7th through the 25th in the Whittington Avenue area between Cedar and Lynn Streets. I want to commend the planning department. Neighborhood services inspectors, they knocked on 288 doors and left packets and information and encouraged residents to utilize the services during this kind of amnesty clean sweep period. Both solid waste and CAPS were there. The following week, they ended up making 117 stops and collected a total of 24 tons of debris, about 15 tons of waste, and about 9 tons of brush. So a lot of work there. We appreciate what they did. The next clean sweep will be May 2nd through the 16th, and we'll be in the Bell Street, Cedarwood Subdivision, Hillsdale Terrace area. Mayor, one of the things that we've worked on over the past several weeks is the Kimry Field installation of our new ball fields. As you know, we had turf fields at Kimry. It's hard to believe that's been 8 or 9 years ago now that we put those fields in. This is a restoration, or basically we've taken up the old turf and have laid new turf. We were out there today, Denny and I. They're looking really, really good. We've got the turf laid on all 4 of the fields. Recent spring showers, the Sprint Turf crew has made quick work of laying down the turf. They've had to kind of work in and out of the rain periods, but they're now in the infill process. And I think when we were out there, Denny, we at least had 2 fields that already had the rubber crumb. They were about to lay a 3rd field, and we'll be doing that. They're still telling us that even with another day of rain this week that's scheduled, they plan to have the fields complete by April 9th, and we plan to start playing games on April the 11th. And finally, green light's been given for the next phase of the Greenway Trail. This is something we've waited quite some time, and RDOT has given us permission to advertise for bids in the next section of the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail. This will run from where it currently ends, right past the Golf Links Bridge, all the way to TV Hill Road. So this new section will also include 2 bridges coming over Hot Springs Creek. The TAP grant amount is $500,000 with a local match of $125,000. So that we're hopeful that we'll get the bids in at 650,000 or 625,000. You know, this is something we've worked on for about 3 years, so we anticipate a little bit higher cost, but we'll be looking at some other revenues that we may be able to take care of any overage that we see. But hopefully we'll get a good bid opening and see some of these numbers. Mayor, that completes my report.
Very good. Any questions of the city manager? Thank you. This time we'll hear from directors on announcements of upcoming events. Do directors have any upcoming
I've got
events?
one there. Oh, just
No, you
go
go ahead, I got several.
Director Jones?
You never have several. The police department is hosting an open house for anyone who may be interested in becoming a Hot Springs police officer. It will be next Wednesday, April 13, at 6 p.m. at the police department at 641 Malvern Avenue. A part of the open house is to learn about the hiring process, which includes a physical fitness test and a written test. The next testing date is scheduled for May 21, and applications are available in the Human Resources at City Hall. Submission deadline is May 13, and applicants must be 20 years old and be able to pass a background check. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Director Weatherford?
Just want to announce play dodgeball with a police officer. The Back the Blue 176 Foundation is hosting a community dodgeball tournament fundraiser starting at 8 a.m. Saturday, April 30th at the Champion Community Center. The theme is bridging the gap between our community and those who serve and protect. It is open to 32 5-player youth teams and 16 6-player adult teams. Find out more by emailing backtheblue176@gmail.com. I want to announce on April 14th, next Thursday, First Baptist Church, I'll be cooking barbecue for first responders, which is, state police, city, county, ambulance service. We had a good turnout the last time we had this. Expect an even bigger turnout this time. And I just wanted to say that Lance and I attended Municipal League, not this last weekend, weekend before last. A very good conference, even though it was cut short. Not as many classes, but very good class on Saturday afternoon, talking about the 2024 eclipse and how the city should be prepared for it. It's going to be a very, very big deal for the state of Arkansas, certain cities in the state of Arkansas, and we happen to be one of those cities. Also, don't forget Memorial Day weekend, our big festival at the airport celebrating the 75th anniversary of the airport. Music for 2 days, barbecue teams coming in. Good time had by all, and once again, I just want to go back to what Bill was talking about, Kimry Park being updated, but if you haven't visited Majestic Park, you need to. I got to visit it last Tuesday night after a meeting, my grandson's first T-ball game. Very impressed with the facility. You must go by and see that.
Very good.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other? Director Holliday?
I just want to make a comment. There's 6-player adult teams and there's 7 of us, so I'm just going to throw that out there.
Oh,
To
well,
play
you
dodgeball
would.
against the police department.
We can't let Elaine, because she'd be one to hurt.
Yeah, I'll be the back
She won't be one.
catcher.
She can be our team manager,
Yes.
just saying.
Mayor, I did.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to announce a public meeting that I'll be hosting on April 27th for residents to put that on their calendar at the event center located at 305 Forest Lakes Boulevard at 4:30 p.m. And our city manager, Mr. Bill Burrow, will be presenting the State of the City address, and public will have opportunity to ask our city manager questions. And hope everyone can come out and bring a friend, and refreshments will be available. Thank you.
Very good. Any other announcements?
I don't think I forgot what I was supposed to tell you, but the firework display has been changed. And I can't remember where.
It's coming
not-
to the airport for Memorial Day.
Okay.
It'll be the largest fireworks
We ever had.
display in the city of Hot Springs ever. We're shooting off 10-inch shells.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, I have one item. April is Water Conservation Awareness Month, and earlier this month I signed a proclamation indicating the same. I'll read it at this time. Whereas the abundant supply of clean drinkable water and environmental stewardship are the lifeblood of economic development in the city of Hot Springs and the surrounding Garland County. And whereas the Wyland Foundation is sponsoring the 11th Annual National Mayor's Challenge for Water Conservation as a friendly competition between cities in the United States to see who can be the most water-wise. Mayors nationwide will challenge their residents to conserve water, energy, and other natural resources on behalf of their city through a series of informative, easy-to-use pledges online. And whereas all residents of Hot Springs and Garland County can participate by taking a simple pledge on the internet at www.mywaterpledge.com during the month of April 2022. And whereas all citizens can do their part by taking the pledge to help promote a water secure future for generations to come. So April 2022 is Water Conservation Awareness Month. I did a video a few weeks back, and I started off water everywhere, not a drop to drink. And you wouldn't think that'd be the case here in Hot Springs, but we all remember February, third week in February of 2021, where we had freezing temperatures. Over 3,000 residential lines were busted, and water was flowing freely. Our tanks were dry. Our brand new 3 million gallon water tank behind Lowe's was completely dry, as well as many of our other tanks. The water department did a heck of a job, in the fire department as well. The whole city staff worked tirelessly for about 3 days trying to get a handle on this, with the fire department turning off water at the street for residences that had busted water lines, and for the city water department to move water to different sections of the community as they could produce as much as they could through the nightfall. So, we always take for granted that water is plentiful until that day, or those days, when we realize that, generally speaking, we're very lucky. And we really had to conserve water during that period of time, which our citizens rose up and did. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of choices, but I had a number of people saying, Pat, I'm running out of clothes. When can I do a load of laundry? And, I said, well, if you do one, make sure it's a full load. So remember, Water Conservation Awareness Month. Go to www.mywaterpledge.com and sign up. A few years back, we were one of the top in the country. We're number 2. And so we can get back up there. So thank you very much. Any other announcements?
I have one quick one.
Yes.
The Garland County Master Gardeners will be hosting their annual plant sale on April 22nd, 23rd, 24th. That's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's out at the Garland County Fairgrounds, and there are vendors, there are plants, there are all kinds of fun things to do out there, and it's always a great event.
Well, thank you. This time we'll move on to the consent agenda. These are of a routine nature and do not merit individual discussion, so we vote on them in mass. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved, Mayor.
Director Jones.
Second.
Seconded by Director Trustee. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is adopted. Our first item under new business is consider resolution R22-53, and I'd ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-53, a resolution approving the 2022 annual street paving list, authorizing city managers to submit same for funding from the 2016 Garland County Sales and Use Tax bonds, and approving certain budget adjustments related thereto. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by
Second.
Director Dobbs-Smith. And providing a staff report will be Assistant City Engineer Mike Hill. Welcome.
Hello. Yes, sir. Our program this year, we're looking to pave 17.2 miles of streets, or 68 street segments, and it actually includes 3 parts. One is the approving of the paving list that's been provided. The second part is to use Pave It Forward funds to fund it. And the third part is making a budget adjustment to get it to $3 million to pave the 68 segments. Would be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hill? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, Director Garcia?
well, it really wasn't a question. I just wanted to say that this is significant to have a $3 million paving budget this year. And I want to thank everybody that had anything to do with making this happen. When I joined the board that year, it was $100,000. And this is significant, and I want to thank everyone that made this possible. And with the recent vote, we look for this to continue to get as many of our city streets improved over the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any one from the audience sign up for this?
No, sir.
Discussion amongst directors or any additional discussion?
I've got
Yeah.
one question, Mayor.
Yes, Director Trustee.
City Manager Bill, the balance of the funds from the Pave It Forward program of $4.7 million, are we just spreading that out over a number of years? Is that what we're doing? Is there a deadline to spend those dollars?
There's not.
Okay.
You know, as we had that Pave It Forward money, we had that set aside thinking that we would use that in connection with some of the county's Pave It Forward funds for improvements to the expressway interchanges.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like that may be coming as part of RDOT's permanent half-cent sales tax, or half-cent tax.
Right.
That's one of the programs or projects that they plan to review and look at and try to fund through that. It's about $45 million, I think was the number. But with that, we no longer need to hold on to those funds.
Okay.
We released about $1.5 million, I think, over the last 2 years, and now we're going to ask for $3 million, and probably next year we'll use that up while we're building our roads now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would assume moving forward after we get through 2022, looking into 2023, that we'll be budgeting somewhere around that $6 to $7 million in paving
Each year.
each year. Over the next 5 anyway,
Right.
while we're collecting
Over the next 5.
the R roads now.
So do we have the capacity to pave that much streets when we get to 16, or, I mean, $6 or $7 million? Because this $3 million is doing 17 miles, I assume. $6 million would do 35 miles.
Well, and that's a good question. And one of the things that has really handicapped us when we're going out for bids is we don't have enough streets in our paving program, or even $1.5 million. The last 2 years have been double what we've done in the prior years.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much work out there with the RDOT projects and other projects that we haven't been able to have a vendor bid on our work. I think the last time we had one vendor, and there's really only a couple in the area, with the hot mix plant being in Jones Mill, that are going to bid on that.
Okay.
So we believe that these larger bid amounts, not only for the city but also with the county, they're doing about the same. And we may be able to even join together as far as the bid with separate projects, but we'll look at economies of scale there. But what I envision is, with this $3 million, and then as we start budgeting around that $7 million, we may see some additional players come into the market
Right.
that will be able to mobilize for a contract that size. So to answer your question, I think it'll benefit us versus hinder us from getting the streets completed.
Right, it should generate more interest from the contractors, that's right. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Directors Holliday,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Dobbs Smith,
Aye.
Weatherford,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Trustee,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider Resolution R-22-54 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-54, a resolution condemning certain real property pursuant to ordinance number 6069 located at 201 Virginia Street. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Thank you. Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by
Second.
Director Jones. And a staff report will be provided by Director of Planning Development, Ms. Kathy Salmon. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight, we have a request to condemn property and ultimately to remove the structure that has been on that property for many years. And I always say this, I think it's important to say, this is a last resort. We have worked and worked with the property owners to bring this property into compliance with basic health and safety codes. At this time, the property owner has demonstrated that he is unable or unwilling to make the repairs to stabilize and make safe that structure. And so we come to you with a request to raise and remove it. The property is at 201 Virginia Street, a multi-unit structure located on the corner of Virginia and Laser. There is another building on this parcel, but at this time, we are requesting only condemnation of 201 Virginia. Neighborhood Services began its most recent work on this structure following a fire in January of 2021. There was significant damage at that time to both the exterior and the interior of the structure. And following that fire, vagrants and others have occupied the structure and the crawl space, causing more damage to the building. At this time, repairs have not been made, although there are some doors and windows that have been boarded on the lower levels. The property is owned by Mr. Moses Lopez since November. Prior to that, it was owned by Neil and Amy Gordon, who owned it beginning in 2016. A 20-day notice of condemnation was issued to Mr. Lopez in January. We've received the signed acknowledgement, and a bank with a financial interest in the property also has been served with notice. So regretfully, we must recommend to you approval of this resolution condemning 201 Virginia Street.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody sign up to speak on this?
No, sir.
You want to read your roll?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of a resolution condemning certain property at 201 Virginia Street? 201 Virginia Street. There is none.
Thank you. Any further discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Dobbs Smith,
Aye.
Weatherford,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Trustee,
Aye.
Holliday,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. We'll consider Resolution R-22-55 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-55, a resolution approving the Community Development Advisory Committee's prioritized fiscal year 2022 applications to be the basis for the fiscal year 2022 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion and second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Jones, seconded by
Second.
Director Weatherford. Our staff report will again be provided by Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Kathy Selman.
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Hot Springs is an entitlement grantee. Each year, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, funds through the Community Development Block Grant Program of an amount of money that is to be used to benefit low and moderate income residents of Hot Springs. Authorization of the funds is contingent upon submission and acceptance of an annual action plan. That action plan details specifically how the funds will be spent. Now, the annual action plan is due no later than 60 days following an announcement of fiscal year CDBG allocations. And failure to submit an annual action plan on time automatically forfeits grant funds for that fiscal year. So we want to make sure we get this in. So you're probably thinking 60 days, that's plenty of time. The only problem is we don't know when that allocation announcement will be made. So in order to be able to pounce on this and get that deadline met, we start early, and with your Citizens Advisory Committee, applicants have presented their applications describing how they would use the funds for eligible activities. The Advisory Committee has prepared for you a prioritized list. Now, this list doesn't go into detail on specifically what steps are going to be required to make these things happen. CDAC, your advisory committee, has looked at all of the projects, has listened to all of the applicants, and this is their best effort to present to you in what order they think funding should occur. Now, why is that priority list important? It's important because we don't know how much money we're going to get. So this list was based upon an assumption, a dangerous thing, that we think we might get something in the vicinity of $440,000 in the upcoming fiscal year. But it could be more and it could be less. And so that priority list is very important to the applicants. It may determine whether they are funded or not funded. So applications came in between December 6th and January 26th. The application period was widely advertised in a variety of media and direct mails to individuals, organizations, prior applicants. We have 13 projects that have been prioritized by CDAC, and they are in order. CDBG Planning and Administration for 2022, Habitat Lot Acquisition, Park Avenue at Holly Street, Traffic, Pedestrian, and Cyclist Safety Improvements, Malvern Avenue Improvement Project, Electric Conduit and Streetlight Foundation, Malvern Avenue Improvement Project, Flashing Crosswalks and Striping, Linden Park Playground, Phase 3, Morrison Avenue Sidewalks, Chelsea Street Sidewalks, Phase 2, a public restroom near the Greenway Trail and Velocity Park, OCYFS Classroom, OCYFS Playground, and that's Washita, was the Washita Children's Center. It's now the Washita Children for Youth and Family Services, I believe. That's right. Followed by a community-based arts program by C4K and MIHCL, which is Miss Ida's House of Care and Love Rehabilitation Phases 1 and 2. How this would work, as proposed by CDAC, is that should the actual grant exceed the total amount requested, and having funded all of the projects on this list, that's our best case scenario, projects would be funded in the prioritized order. If there are projects in excess of the available amount of funding, they would be placed on hold for reconsideration in case additional funding becomes available in fiscal year 2022. And we often find that projects, once completed, come in under budget, or at least we have in years gone by, and have had additional funds available, allowing funding of some of the lower prioritized projects. If the actual grant exceeds the total amount requested, then the unallocated excess funds would be reserved for neighborhood and economic development infrastructure improvements where such funds may be used for eligible projects. Or the Community Development Advisory Committee may recommend other specific action to the board. I mentioned in our agenda session that there was a risk assessment for each application in the packet, and that risk assessment was intended as information for community development block grant staff in terms of how much technical assistance might be needed by the grantees. This was not a way of saying that a project was or was not a good risk. And I want to point that out. Some projects with city department partnerships may have higher CDAC priorities because their need for technical assistance was lower than some of the others. But I hope that you will keep in mind that this is a great list of projects. We have several that are direct grassroots projects. This is exactly what we want with our funds, and I encourage you to consider the list that CDAC has provided to you. Also want to mention that there have been a few public comments received. We included those in your packets, and those were suggesting a higher priority for the public restroom near the Greenway Trail and Velocity Park. And that's more than you probably wanted to hear, but there it is. That's the whole story. Thank you very much.
You all follow that? So, any questions for Ms. Selman?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Director Garcia.
Yes, Director Selman, what are the hours if the public restroom is funded? Is it open 24 hours or is it closed at a certain time?
That is a question that I have absolutely no idea how to handle, and that is also a question that that may or may not have a bearing on establishing a priority for these projects. But I would yield on that particular question to Director Anthony Whittington, who I believe is here and can answer those questions.
Come on up, Anthony.
He's coming forward at this time.
Thank you. I had received this question and I didn't know, and so that's why I'm asking it.
Thank you. At this time, it'll be open like our other park restrooms. It'll be open 24 hours a day, unless we start seeing issues with vandalism or anything like that. Then we may have to take action on something different. But right now it'll be on our open 24 hours a day like the rest of our park restrooms.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions of Ms. Selman or Mr. Whittington?
I have a question for
Director
Selman.
Holliday.
It actually has to do with the timeline. I know the 60 days after allocation, and I know sometimes that can get a little hairy, but when is the next CDAC meeting? Because based on some of the things you said, one, that there's new public comment for the one item, also that the risk assessment may have been misunderstood. Do you feel that we have time perhaps to send it back to CDAC to give them a little bit more time to actually take that into consideration a bit more?
I believe the next meeting normally would be scheduled on the first Thursday of the month. Yes, yes, first Thursday of the month. So that would be this
In 2
week.
days. Okay, so we really, if that's something that we do, we would really only be moving this back by perhaps a few weeks versus,
You would be moving it by probably 4.5 weeks, yes.
okay. Just because I do see that the amount of requests does exceed our anticipated amount, which, you know, I was on CDAC when we had a very large surprise, you know, early on, and that may happen again. But, you know, if in fact these should be prioritized differently with a different understanding of the criteria, I would really hate to see some of these other projects not be prioritized perhaps where they should be. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm looking for your thoughts on that timeline, if it would be something that could perhaps be detrimental at that point.
Well, thank you for asking the question. This is a year in which we expect to be looking at previous year allocations and perhaps reallocating some unspent funds from earlier allocations. So this year may be there may be more opportunity for funding in this year than simply the amount that would come for fiscal 2022. Again, nothing is promised on any level with any of this, so we're just kind of guessing. And the 440 number, you know, it's an average, and an average is a number that represents something in the middle of the highest and lowest, and we don't have any guarantee from the federal government of what direction the dollars will go this year. And Congress hasn't even made their final decision on anything, so we don't really know if there is a program to take it to its extent there.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. Do we have anybody sign up from our community?
No, sir.
Any further discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider Resolution R-22-56, and I'll ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-56, a resolution extending the due diligence period set forth in the real estate contract with R.A. Wilson Enterprises, Inc. for the sale of property located at 101 Park Avenue and for other purposes. That concludes reading. Mayor, if you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt
So moved.
Second.
was Director Dobbs-Smith made that? Okay, seconded by Director Jones. Thank you. And our staff report will be provided by City Manager, Mr. Bill Burrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff is recommending the board consider granting R.A. Wilson Enterprises, Inc. an extension of the due diligence period provided in the real estate contract for the sale of the former Majestic Hotel site. On July 20th, 2021, the Hot Springs Board of Directors passed ordinance number 6388 that authorized a real estate contract with R.A. Wilson Enterprises, Incorporated to effectuate the sale of real property at 101 Park Avenue in order to construct an outdoor entertainment pavilion on the 5.2 acres of city-owned property. The proposal calls for a 5,000-seat venue styled similar to the Walmart Amp located in Rogers, Arkansas. The submitted site plan calls for a large stage for performing arts, concessions, and tiered patron seats on the lawn and covered permanent seating. The negotiated purchase price is $2.163128, $2,163,128, with earnest money of $100,000 currently held in escrow. Section 9 of the contract provided a due diligence period of 180 days, which expired on January 16th, 2022. but was extended per the contract for another 90 days for the buyer to have additional time to conduct its due diligence review. This extension expires on April the 16th, just here in a couple of weeks. Mr. Wilson has requested an additional extension of the due diligence period until January 20th of 2023, with the request that the $100,000 in earnest money currently in escrow becomes non-refundable on October 20th, 2022, unless the contract is terminated prior to that date. Because the agreement does not provide for an extension after April 16th, the Board of Directors would have to authorize such extension as an amendment to the July 20th, 2021 contract. Mr. Wilson is here with his team and is prepared to speak to the board on what has happened to date, what is currently happening, and then what he foresees coming in the future of this due diligence period. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Burrow on his report? Thank you. So we will hear from the Wilson team. I have a couple notes here that says 4 speakers, and then I have another gentleman who wants to speak on in favor of. So, Mr. Wilson, do you want to kick off, and then you can bring the others up as you see fit.
I have a handout.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, board and directors, city manager, city clerk, and city attorney. I appreciate this time. It's been a while since I've been here before you. We had a good time and enjoyed that meeting July 20th, 21. And the city, you voted, agreed to put the property under contract to sell us for the purpose of designing and constructing and ultimately an operator operating an outdoor entertainment pavilion, more affectionately referred to as amphitheater, or now abbreviated to AMP. I would like to tell you tonight that I have, of our team members that are present to speak to you tonight, after my comments, and certainly available for any questions that you might have of me, I'll be introducing Mr. Peter Lane, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Walton Arts Center and the Walmart AMP in Rogers. After Mr. Lane, I'll be introducing Mr. Larry Yancey, Executive Vice President of Real Estate for our company, for comments and or questions. And lastly, if necessary, Q. Baumhurst, our legal counsel representative in our project here in Hot Springs. I think first and mostly important, I would like to identify, and I realize that, or at least I presume that the letter I sent dated March 14th of 2022 to City Manager Burrow, that you've seen that and received that. So some of the things and some information I'm going to talk about to you is and are highlights from that letter that are pertaining predominantly to what we've been doing since July in due diligence phase of this development of this property. So I'm kind of going to jump from the last thing and move it to the first thing, and that is because we're so excited about it and happy that we've been able to accomplish this. I'm announcing, and he's here tonight to. We're pleased to announce that we have reached an agreement in framework with the Walton Arts Center to be our operator, tenant of the property. We have a process that we will be going through over the next few months with the Walton Arts Center to ultimately achieve an, in fact, executed lease agreement or operating agreement, if you will. It's a rather involving process. It's not really as simple as simply just hiring someone or hiring a company or an entity to perform a service for you. It's rather involving. And as I pointed out and have always pointed out to the board and to the others in media, press release, and I think many of you commented on in the two previous board meetings where I was before you, we've all recognized that I'm a commercial real estate developer. That's what my company does. That's what we do to earn a living. We develop real estate all over the United States. We have regular Fortune 500 tenants we develop for, and we've developed some speculative projects and innovative projects as well, this being certainly going to be one. However, that doesn't make this project a success. We can design it, we can bring in and utilize all of our staff professionals, contract professionals. We can spend an inordinate amount of money, for example. But in this case, with this particular type of an entertainment venue, without the least of imperfectionists to have the best operator of this venue, it likely would not succeed. There have been those in the country that haven't, and it's operator driven. I think the mayor eloquently pointed that out in our July meeting. And so I made it clear that our first interest and most important interest was trying to reach an agreement for the Walton Arts Center to be our operator. That was our first choice. And so we went through a process that we explained, or I explained before the board, that would be step one if the board agreed to sell us the property, and that would be to establish and conduct a market assessment of the Hot Springs market, Central Arkansas market, and then the tourist-driven market. And in fact, would ultimately become a market analysis. And so, as part and parcel of that market analysis, some of the real value, not just to provide validity, feasibility, and profitability, it also provides pro forma data that's necessary for the operator of this currently non-existent facility to be able to determine profitability, to be able to determine many aspects of their pro forma for the business operation for its future. And so, having recognized that, and we knew that, we all knew that up in the very beginning, we knew it all along, that was the very first thing we had to do, and that is the very first thing we did. The Walton Arts Center selected the marketing consulting agency that performed the assessment. They utilized a company they use and periodically for more information from market analysis, and we participated, and our company paid for it. I will tell you, and I don't wish to steal any of Peter's thunder, so I won't do that, but I'll tell you the popularity that was resultive from the interviews, both email, in writing, phone conference, Zoom conference, and in person, was 78.6%. I will attend. That was from Central Arkansas, as well as a 500-mile radius of Hot Springs from the tourist-driven markets. So we're very excited that the Walton Arts Center and Wilson Enterprises are at the point where we've established the framework to ultimately complete and reach an executed contract for them to operate our venue. So I just felt it was important to point that out first. To give you a brief description of what we've been doing since July 20, as I just mentioned, the market analysis. The market analysis was conducted in two phases. Phase one was in writing, teleconference, and email or electronic communication. I believe we engaged the consultant in late July. The contract with the city began, I believe, is July 20. That phase one was completed October 18. I think I mentioned to the board we were hopeful that'd be a 6 to 8 week process. It was not. The phase 2 of the process was completed, and phase 2, I might add, for your benefit and knowledge, was an in-person interview program. And as you can imagine, in-person interviews between October 18th and it was completed on December 2nd of 21 during COVID, and the peak of that in those times was rather difficult, to say the least. We did hit a COVID wall. I know we're all tired of hearing about excuses for COVID. We're not an excuse-driven group, trust me, but we ran into some rather serious COVID issues. We ran into deaths of people that we were working with. And so we had some setbacks there, and we lost some very valuable time. However, the benefactor of that, we have in our possession a market analysis that is so detailed. We literally had people tell us the thickness of the cushion of the seats that they want to sit on. That's a lot of detail, and I'm not exaggerating to prove a point. That is, in fact, in the market analysis. Won't steal any more of Mr. Lane's thunder when he gets up. We completed rather lengthy process of title work and cleanup. As you can imagine, that I don't even recall the last date that title transferred prior to the city taking possession of the property, but it had some rather interesting blemishes attached to it. We cleaned that up. We conducted 3 surveys of the property at meets and bounds. We conducted a format survey, and we conducted an ALTA survey in addition to our topographical survey, which was part of the ALTA. That took, typically on a property that size, that shouldn't take but maybe 3 weeks. That took 9 weeks. We lost our surveyor to COVID. We researched and obtained cost estimates on materials and supplies for future construction in order to continuously make attempts at budgeting this project. If you wonder how did you do that without having the design of it completed, that's a good question. So I explained this back in July when we first took a stab at budgeting this, and we had it in the 15.5 range. We utilized the plans, the architectural and construction plans from the Walmart AMP in Rogers, which was built and expanded at 2 different times. Our general contractors, our subcontractors, 2 different architects, and our acoustical engineers took those data from those plans, reduced it in concept, be it because the Walmart AMP is on a larger parcel than ours. They set it down on our footprint conceptually, then created formulas for determining square footage and square inch of material used. So we essentially adopted a budgetary style of trying to cost it based on if we reused essentially the same type material again. And in doing so, the last attempt we made at that, which was in December, we were rather shocked to find out we hit 18.8 million for the project. So a lot of that had to do with inflation, and mostly inflation and a lack of some material. I think in one of my updated letters I sent to the city manager, I identified that we had a real issue with steel products, and we finally reached an agreement with a steel foundry manufacturer in Canada, and we've agreed to make a bulk purchase of raw material and put in our facility that we own in Oklahoma City to store that material and then send on to our fabricator. It bought down the price by about 40%, and we will utilize we had to buy more material, raw material, than we will need at the Hot Springs AMP, and we'll utilize that for other projects that we have with our other clients around the country. Those are pretty expensive things to do. We've toured and inspected 5 amphitheaters around the country. Of course, the Walmart AMP in Rogers, Shoreline AMP in Mountain View, California, the Greek Theater in Los Angeles, Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles, Red Rock Amphitheater in Colorado, and Ravinia AMP in Chicago. We also had, to date, a little over I've lost track or lost count. Assistant gave me a number of a little over 100. She has 102 design team meetings that we have had in person, Zoom, conference with State of Arkansas, Department of Transportation, Engineering Design, and Highway Design specialty engineers, architects, our civil engineers, other civil engineers who have completed these projects for infrastructure and site planning and around the country, 5 operators, general contractors, support service companies, supporting service companies to the operator, that is, as well as neighboring property owners. And in that process, we also had 7 meetings with other developers that are from out of state, from Nashville and Houston, that approached us about other development activities in the downtown area should this amphitheater come to fruition. We completed phase 1 of 3-phase geological surveys. We've drilled to date, we've drilled 38 core samples. We have 118 in total that anticipated. We had to stall that based on the fact that architects pointed out we were starting to get a little bit ahead of ourselves with design, simply because there's certain areas of this property we may not construct and need footers and foundations for structures, and at the cost of $1,100 per sample, we decided that we'd save some money and we'd hold off and move the phase 2 and phase 3 of the remainder of that until we get further into the actual design phase, architectural design phase, that is. In front of you, the handout that I provided, I'd like to identify for you that, as was in the beginning, was through all of our meetings and still is today. As we know, parking is always an issue in downtown. It was an issue for us. We hired our traffic consultants to create a mobility parking plan, but as I committed myself to the board to do, that we would do, is we would continue during our due diligence process the goal to try to achieve more parking closer to the venue. We have done that. So I'd like to point out to you in the handout I've given you, the red bordered property, there's a legend up top, but I'll point it out quickly. The red bordered property represents the property, the majestic property, if you will. The purple property highlighted beside it on Cedar Street is a sliver of private property that a house is being, I think a rent house is being built on. The property in black border is property that belongs to Prime Water that purchased from Mountain Valley when they bought Mountain Valley Water. We reached an agreement for a lease purchase agreement for all of their property. Our site planning from our engineers have, based on the topography, they have concluded that these 2 properties are going to add about 848 spaces. As you can tell, the large tract that essentially sits up top, if you will, on the east side of Cedar Street that borders us, it's contiguous to our property. And we look forward to being able to utilize that property up there that's not being used for anything and probably never will be. It'll be a parking lot that's out of the way. We'll be able to keep it environmentally secure on the borders. It's highly unlikely anybody would know a parking lot's there. It'd be a sizable one. If you notice next to the purple sliver of private property, you'll see some blue arrows. That's a sliver of property. If you're familiar with Cedar Street, in that first block, there's a yellow house there. We have that property under contract to purchase, closing on that next month. That will be, in effect, our driveway cut from Cedar up top. On the west side of Cedar Street, the property that belongs to Prime is, here again, if you're familiar with that property area, you'll know that that's their warehouse. They intend to utilize that warehouse for all of 2023, and then starting in 24, we will take that property. we will most likely take that building down. And if we do, that measures off to an additional 88 spaces. Lastly, I will point out that in our engineers meetings and architectural design folks, in meetings they've had with RDOT, the engineering, specifically the highway engineering design team, we have received a really warm welcome about the redesign of the tri-section of Whittington Park Avenue and Central Avenue. Our engineers have concluded, and the state agrees with us thus far in concept, that redesign of that tri-section will be necessary. It'll be necessary to accommodate the angle of turn, if you will, from Park Avenue swinging around to Cedar Street. And because that predominantly will be an area where our tour buses and our 65-foot wide body tractor trailer rigs will be coming in to pull in behind the stage area. Also, that will create a new tri-section, and of course, I have mentioned this to the city manager, that this will be forthcoming, and we'll bring this, of course, in our planning. When we get to our site planning, the city will be involved in this. This is one of probably the top reasons for the amount of time that we're going to need in the extension of due diligence that we're asking for. This redesign and approval process will take several months. I'll stop at this point and ask if anybody would like to ask me any questions before I move into what I anticipate lies ahead should the board agree to give us our extension.
No, just continue, please.
Okay. Over the next 6 to 9 months, and what we're asking for from the board is essentially what we thought would be 6 months extension, and then we, in abundance of caution, add an additional 3 months to that, so it's like a 6 plus 3 equal 9. Over the next 6 months, and that's what I'll talk about predominantly, if the board were to approve our extension request tonight, beginning tomorrow, I'm reassembling our architectural design team. That will be staff members of the Walton Arts Center, both styles of architects that we have, our civil engineers, our acoustical design engineers, and our general contractors representatives. They will immediately move back into the complete architectural concept design, that is to actually identify where the stage will be specifically so that it can be surveyed, where concessions, covered seating, that sort of thing, the entire project design. And that will have to move rather quickly. In addition to that, after we complete that design, we probably will be in a position where the operator and our company can complete our contract for lease and operation of the property. The design aspects of that are very critical to the operator. In fact, not just to the Walton Arts Center, every operator of these venues expressed the same degree of sentiment. So after that, civil engineering will also be involved for the site planning. Simultaneously, we'll be on a parallel track, civil engineer site planning, tri-section redesign will come after site plan has been assembled and agreed upon and submitted to the Planning Commission. Here's the part that I'm not sure of. I'm not sure if we're going to ask the city to allow us to approach the Planning Commission in a bifurcated program. We have done that in other cities across the country. It slows the process down, but we'll have a site plan for our 5.2 acres. We'll have our site plan also for our properties that are contiguous and for our parking lots. We'll have an exhibited section of the site plan for our parking lots that we're going to have agreements on, the private property parking lots that we get to utilize and have agreements for, that we committed to provide as a deliverable at closing. The bifurcation will come in the redesign of the tri-section of Whittington Park Avenue and Central Avenue. We almost feel like that should be a separate presentation, and that will most likely be a second presentation. Here again, that's assuming the city will agree to that. If not, that would probably be the one thing that would push us into the 90-day extension period, bringing that much before the city at planning commission at one time. And then we will, after those processes, of course, our architects then change, and we go back to our construction architect, and our architect will create our actual construction plans. Then those will be submitted to the city for review, approval, and ultimately permitting, then close on the property. That's some specificity, quite a bit general. We could really go into more weeds if you like than that. I don't think you want them. I think I'm confident in expressing those categories of what we have ahead of us for this project. I'll tell you the same thing that I was quoted saying by the Sentinel Record and other press releases. Our company's developed 126 properties in America to date, and I'll tell you, most processes of real estate development, commercial real estate development, it is always a domino effect. Place the property under contract, locate property, place it under contract, whether you're going to build an amphitheater, a bowling alley, a Walgreens, a Tractor Supply, and we've done them all. Locate the property, place the property under contract to have a secure hold on the property that will secure in your investment so that you don't invest all this money and then ultimately you lose the property, of course, and that's good common sense to anybody. But that's 101. Then the other dominoes to fall is site planning, stormwater, any utility redistribution, relocation, or brought to property, if you will, architectural design. There's planning commission, construction plans, permitting, building permit, closed property, and construction. This project, I'm going to tell you, is 1,000 baby steps. There are no giant steps in this. I'm going to be, as I stand in front of you, and I will humbly admit to you, this is a major task. This is a giant undertaking. This is an outstanding giant undertaking. This project, our market analysis has proven to be unbelievably popular and desired by Central Arkansas and our tourists, but is not going to come fast. I thought when I approached you earlier on in 2021, I thought we'd be ready to permit this by now. And I stand before you admitting I was wrong.
Well, Mr. Wilson, let us move with some of the.
I'm ready to move on. I'd like to introduce to you, if you don't have any questions of me, and you don't have any questions, I see that.
Well, we may bring you back.
Okay, that'll be fine. I'd like to introduce
some of the
to
other
you.
presenters may answer some questions as we hear from them.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Peter Lane. Now, let me tell you just a bit about Mr. Lane before he steps up here. Mr. Lane, before moving to Northwest Arkansas and becoming the president and CEO of the Walton Arts Center and the Walmart AMP, spent 2 years as chief executive officer of Bethel Woods Center for the Arts in Woodstock, New York. It included a 25,000-seat outdoor concert venue, a 1,000-seat outdoor terrace stage, and an intimate 440-seat indoor hall and museum. He also spent 10 years as president and CEO of the Mann Center for the Performing Arts in Philadelphia. That's the summer home of the Philadelphia Orchestra. They had an outdoor amphitheater with a total seating capacity of approximately 14,000. He then spent 10 years as the executive director of the New York Pops at Carnegie Hall. Since joining the Walton Arts Center in May of 2009, he completed a $24 million renovation and expansion of the Walton Arts Center Performing Arts Campus in Fayetteville in 2016. Under his leadership, the Walton Arts Center built and opened the state's largest outdoor entertainment venue in Rogers, Arkansas, known as the Walmart Arkansas Music Pavilion. He completed that in 2014 and then completed a $17.1 million expansion for the project in 2020. With that, I give you Mr. Peter Lane.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Hi. Thank you for having me. I guess the first question you probably want to know is, why are we doing this? So I'll start with that and just say, we see this as a huge opportunity. I would say there's an economic opportunity. There's a great tourism opportunity. Marketplace is in need, in our view, of something of this magnitude. And I think it's a great opportunity for arts and culture in general. We've looked at, you've heard Mr. Wilson, and I won't go on to the same level of detail, but I would say our analysis shows that tourism is a real important component of amphitheater that I've done and been involved with. At the Walmart Amp, 20% of our audiences come from outside of our region. And when you look at the economics of tourism, it's pretty stout in the performing arts area. Our numbers in Northwest Arkansas, we've been, every 5 years we work with the Americans for the Arts to do the Prosperity Economic Study. We were the only organization in the state of Arkansas to do that up until recently. And 4 years ago, the numbers pre-pandemic showed that for everybody who purchased a ticket, there was a bump of $34 on top of the purchase of that ticket from the people who live in the region. For those who come outside the region, that's goes up to about 70. Now, those are our numbers. Every community has a little bit of a different. If you're in New York, those numbers are a lot different. But it just kind of shows that when you see a couple 100,000 people coming in who are purchasing tickets, that economic boom gets spread out all over. Our analysis shows that there is no venue of this type at the level that we're intending to, that we would be involved with the level of first-class amenities for our patrons and at the level of artists that we're thinking of bringing in. And so we see a hole, if you will. And from a revenue perspective, you know, I think what will happen is it will generate revenue that could support what we're interested in, which is our mission, which is around access, education, and outreach. And so I think that is something that's really dear to us. It's our DNA, and so the revenue from this can help with those elements as well. Take a minute and just talk a little bit more about the survey. In Northwest Arkansas, we don't focus on any other area but Northwest Arkansas. And so we did not know anything about hot springs. And so that's why we commissioned this study and insisted if we were going to be involved, we needed to understand what it is we were stepping into. And so we used an insights firm that we have a lot of confidence with. I think you heard from Mr. Wilson, but I would say there were sort of two components to this. There was what we would call the qualitative interviews, which was the secondary part, and the quantitative, which was the first part. We had some goals, and our first two goals, our primary goal was to assess the interest in an amphitheater of around 5,000 seats in Hot Springs, and secondary to gather input related to concerns or design issues related to the venue and its appeal. Of course, we asked lots of different questions. You may have been a person who was asked questions and was on the interview process, and I hope you were. But here's what we learned from it, and this is very top level. It really validated that there was a strong desire for a new concert venue that provides, again, the first-class audience experience with what I would call AAA performers, pardon me. It also verified that the concert venue would need to appeal to a wide variety of audiences by presenting a diverse lineup and different genres, and that was really important. It confirmed that the facility should be utilized for more than just concerts, and it confirmed that the new venue needs to be designed to make sure it visually fits in to where you are in this particular location. This is a very historic city. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but as an outsider, I have family who have come to Arkansas and happened to visit me. I was fortunate that they were going to Hot Springs. And one thing I can say that the impression of Hot Springs is it needs to fit in. It needs to feel right. We learned that from the survey as well. It just only confirmed that. I would say that I've been involved in a few amphitheaters, and it's not like building a shopping mall. The reason we took a lot of time to figure out whether we could do this was, A, we needed to study the market and really make sure that we could check all the boxes, which we've done. That survey, as you've heard, took a long time. And then we had to sit down with our friends, Wilson Enterprises, to figure out, do we have a framework for how to move forward? Because at the end of the day, it has to work for everybody. If we're going to be involved, it's going to be a similar experience to what you would see if you've been to the Walton Arts Center or to the Walmart Amp. I've been involved with some very important, I think, wonderful institutions. And what's really important to me and to our organization, the top of the list is quality. The quality of that experience for artists, the quality of that experience for audiences, as well as for staff. That is the key ingredient. So if we're going to do it, we're going to step in and we're going to give it 100%, and we're going to do it a way that many operators would not do. And I would just say, so our vision for how this works is to build an amphitheater and do it right. Make sure it fits in, make sure it meets all the goals, that we hit all the points within the elements that we think are important, and make sure that we can satisfy this. Arkansas is a very small state in the entertainment world. Bottom line is we are still a tertiary market, even Little Rock. For us to get the best talent, we have to make sure we are doing everything just right. The reason the Walton Arts Center just finished 2 weeks of Hamilton, being the smallest theater and the smallest market in the country, is because we spent 4.5 years convincing them that it was going to be a win-win situation. The reason we have Dave Matthews and some of the biggest acts on the planet, including James Taylor and Jimmy Buffett and Chris Stapleton, coming to the Walmart Amp is because we are very intentional about what we do. And I think when you come and see our venues and you come, we hope that that experience is really at the high end of what you would experience in other places. Our goal here is not to build an amphitheater to look like the Walmart Amp. It won't. It's got to fit in to what it does here. And our council and our role would be to make sure it meets the needs of what Hot Springs needs, not what Northwest Arkansas needs, with the quality measure, I think, of what we would bring to the table. Lastly, I would just say we're also very intentional about who we work with. And we're not interested in doing this project by ourselves. I don't live here. I live in Northwest Arkansas. If this moves forward the way we hope it does, we will have a full team on the ground here in Hot Springs that will be fully dedicated to this venue. We will also have some shared services, some back-of-house things that we can do remotely. But it's also really important that we know who it is we work with. And the thing I can tell you, and the reason this has taken so long, is we really wanted to get to know our potential partner. We need to know they were committed, that they also were committed to the quality, and that they knew that we were going to take our time, and that they were going to stand by us to make sure that we did it right. There are millions of companies out there. I've been to every single venue that Mr. Wilson has gone to see, and I didn't tell him who to go see. He happened to hit some really good ones. I have been the chair of the Festival Managers Association. that had Ravinia, Tanglewood, Hollywood Bowl, Wolf Trap, and the Mann Center. And I can tell you, those organizations are very intentional. He happened to hit some great ones. He hit some pretty crappy ones too, but it's really good to get that balance. You want to see it all in the world. We're excited about where this could go. I know that you're trying to make a decision to extend this time. It is a drop in the bucket of how much time it will really ultimately take. It's a drop in the bucket of time in terms of the longevity of what this venue could really do for our community and our state. So I would encourage you to consider giving that time so we can continue the work that needs to be done. Another question I'm sure that'll come up is, why didn't you sign the contract already? Well, he doesn't own the property, number one, and number two, we have no idea what it is. Y'all don't buy a car without seeing it and knowing what it does and how it operates. And we need to know that before we can all sign on. So that's the kind of partnership we're looking to do going forward. That's the kind of time and energy we've already put into it, but it will be a lot of energy and time going forward that we really plan to do to make sure it's right at the edge of where we want it to be. That's all I have to say. I don't know if there's any questions.
We have any questions for Mr. Lane? I do have a question. I mean, I was tracking you, and then you kind of veered right at the end. I was thinking that, you know, what would have to occur for Walton Arts Center not to be involved at this point in time?
Not getting the property would be one.
Well, let's put that off to the side. That's what else? I mean, that's
Not much. We're good to go. I mean, our board is informed, our leadership, my leadership team is ready to go. We have spoken with our potential partners. The concert business world is a really small world. And as I said, this is a small market. This is a small microcosm of a small market. So we've already spoken to our potential partners, our booking partners, our production partners, our food and beverage partners, to make sure that there is an interest. We've also spoken to folks in Central Arkansas who are potential, perhaps labor suppliers. This is a very labor-intensive business. And so far, we've gotten great response, and we've done our due diligence. We know what the market can do. We also know what we think the potential is, and it won't happen the first year. This takes time. This is an investment of our time and energy. But right now, there's nothing precluding us from moving forward at this point at all. Absent.
So you have confidence in your dealings with Wilson Enterprises that the design and the construction and the look and everything that you would want to see is going to be there.
That's what we're going to be working on for the next couple of months. Now we're at the phase. We know now what the potential is. We finished the market study. We have a framework in place. Now, as Mr. Wilson said, we got to dig in, re-engage those design experts to make sure that if we want a stage that can do 85 feet across and carry 85,000 pounds, that we can in fact do it where we need it to be. And we'll have lots of specifics about what we need to make sure it works. I believe Mr. Wilson and his team is very committed to making that happen. It has to happen in a budget. We all understand that. But if we can get all those pieces in place, which I believe we can, based on the conversations we've had and the direction, we're good to go.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Mayor, I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lane, thank you for being here. I think your presence is very welcomed. I think that we need to hear from you. What I need to hear from you from a legal standpoint is, am I hearing that your ability to work with Wilson Enterprises is contingent upon him closing on this property?
No, we're going to work going forward, starting, we already have a framework of understanding. No, we've been working, and we will continue to do that. The real question is whether the final deal that we have, the ink on that last agreement,
Right.
can't be done until we know he's going to own the property and can build everything we all want to have built.
And you understand that our contract with the buyer states that prior to closing, he will provide us with a memorandum of understanding that you have signed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you're prepared to do that?
Yes, sir. That works.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any further questions from directors? Thank you.
I have one.
Oh, Director Trustee?
What is the approximate time frame? I know Mr. Wilson talked about 6 months, and then probably 3 more.
Yeah.
How long to get to that memorandum of understanding that you're ready to sign? Maybe you don't sign until we close the property, or
Yeah.
as City Attorney Albright just said, it has to be signed before we close. We have to have an agreement in place. What's the time frame in getting to that point? Are we 3 months away or 6 months away?
Probably closer to once we've finished all the design work.
Okay.
Look, we want to build a Cadillac here, and in order to do that, we got a lot of work to do. And we want to make sure that it has all those pieces that are in place and that we can actually get it done within the budget that they have. So their design team, our operations team, our planning team need to all be sitting down and working through that. And so it's going to take probably all of 9 months. It's taken me between 1 and 3 years to build the Walmart amp. Just to put this in context, we are going to try to move this along quickly. I would, if this is a project that the city wants to see happen and believes is going to have the kind of impact that I think we can share, that I think is there, you want to take the time and get it right. There are plenty of white elephants out there of buildings that are half-built, some that are built that just don't crank out revenue. At the end of the day, if we crank out the kind of revenue that this can work, it means that we can do things that the Walmart amp does. For example, we do a lot of cultural events out there. We do concerts with the symphony, the local symphony and fireworks. We lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. I probably shouldn't have said that. Okay. But that's a cultural part of what we do. And it's important because for $3 or $5, whole families can come out and enjoy a cultural event like that. We do concerts with movies. We do programs for the community. We use the venue for the Red Cross Run and the LPGA and Walmart and different venues all the time. We offer them all huge discounts because we don't want it to just sit there. But you have to make revenue on what you're good at, which is doing the concerts, so that you can do all these other things. And so it has a vibrancy. We can only do that if the planning is done right, if we get all the pieces in place, that we have all the VIP areas and the places for the artists so they know when they get there. They say to their manager, man, Hot Springs was awesome. It was right downtown, a great venue, hotel next door, treated well. That's all you need. The worst thing that can happen is you get the email that says, these guys are clueless. I was in a little dark room, did blah, 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 and they'll never coming back. So the planning piece, long-winded way to say all that stuff that we need to get done now is critical. And so time is going to be important here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bet. Thank you all.
I'd like to introduce Larry Yancey, Executive Vice President of Real Estate for our company.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, first thing I want to say is echo what Peter just said about building the relationships between our companies. Our company certainly enjoyed the benefit of building the relationship with the folks at the Walmart AMP and the Walton Arts Center. We are quite impressed with them. We're very pleased that they're impressed with what we have and what we have done. We've made several trips there. We've gotten to know Peter and his management team, and it is a crackerjack group. He has built an outstanding management team, and we know we've made the right choice for an operator with Walmart AMP people. Now, the purpose of my brief comments is picking up on something Peter said about quality, and what my comments would go to is the quality of the contract that we have in place with the city. There's 4 items I want to hit. One, we've got an executed contract. You have a valid, legally binding, fully executed contract. Our purchase price is open to the world. They know what it is. Our purchase price was easy to come to. The city manager, city attorney told us the city needed to be made whole, and we believe we made the city whole with the offer and our price. But no, the city's had to deal with this property for a long time, had some expenses, and when we're through with the purchase, it's our understanding that you will have all of your expenses reimbursed for this property. 2 other important points on the contract I'd like to mention. Number 1, we're limited to what we can do with this property. There's only one function that we can put on this property, and it's restricted in the contract language. We can only build an outdoor entertainment facility, and that's our intention. We can't do anything else. That is unusual with real estate contracts, but certainly we were glad to agree to that because that's our intent and our purpose. The second item I'd like to highlight is we made a commitment to the city in the contract that, as Brian just mentioned, we will produce a memorandum of agreement to the city before we close, assuring the city that we have chosen a competent and qualified operator for this venue. Second item is money. We certainly think that you understand by now that we're capable of performing on the financial side. We've got a $100,000 earnest money deposit that we made with Hot Springs Title to show our capability and show our dedication to the project. We've performed all of the functions that we can perform up to this point in the contract, and additionally, we filed voluntary reports with the city manager on at least 3 different occasions to keep you apprised of where we stand and what we've been doing. To date, our costs exceed over $200,000, and that's just getting in preparation to go through the process for nailing down this project. Third item, we're a proven developer. Over the past 2 decades, our company has bought or sold over 120 pieces of real estate, from New Mexico to Florida, from South Texas to Wisconsin. If I may brag for a minute, we know what we're doing. This is what we do. This is our nature. Most of the properties I mentioned, we developed from the ground up. So we fully understand the necessary substance and, most importantly, the process to make a real estate development project work. Rick mentioned the process. I won't beat that drum any longer than that. The process is critically important. I can assure you, though, if you don't follow the process for due diligence and to make sure you've checked all the boxes on a real estate project of this magnitude before you get to the point of closing, you're guaranteed to have a failed project. And that happens, nobody's happy. We don't intend to do that. We're going through and check our boxes like we do and complete the process. Last item I'll mention is the market study. It has established the public popularity of this project and also the feasibility of this project. It's something that will replace where the Majestic has stood for a number of years. Summing up, the city, my view is, with our contract and us as developer and Walmart AMP people as operator, you've got a bird in hand. You know the purchase price, you know our capacity to perform both financially and development of the project and to complete the process before we ask you for the extension. We appreciate your consideration. Open for any questions, or I'll come back later and answer questions if you have questions later.
Any questions of directors at this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm Q. Byram Hurst, and my address is 520 Washita in Hot Springs. And I'll be very brief because I think you've heard what you need to hear in regard to this. But I'm the lawyer, or RA lawyer, for RA Wilson Enterprises. My role in this is, one of the things is to develop a memorandum of understanding between RA Wilson Enterprises and the operator, which we intended to be the Walton Arts Center. And frankly, I'm really excited about this project, and I became more excited when I talked to Peter Lane and realized that Mr. Lane is a man of integrity, but a man that can deliver. Hot Springs used to be referred to quite often as the city of the arts, and his emphasis is on art. And I was impressed with not only what he's done, but what he sees in this project in Hot Springs. Now, I was not surprised when I was approached to read the contract and can we get an extension? And of course, you can get an extension with the approval of the board, but we've been through a pandemic, and this contract was signed in the middle of it. I have a lot of clients that are contractors, a lot of clients that are developers, and they would come to me with statements of, I can't get product, I can't get material, I can't fulfill this contract, I can't even get workers, I can't get people to come to work. Now, people in that industry were faced with that, and to some degree they still are. But what you've heard tonight, you know that Rick Wilson and Wilson Enterprises has not been sitting back doing nothing. They've been working hard. Mr. Lane is not sitting back doing nothing. This is not a matter of a dilatory tactic. They've been working hard on this project, and I'm excited as a kid off Park Avenue, the north end of town. I'm just excited to see this going up there, and I think it's going to be one of the biggest boosts to Hot Springs that we've ever seen. So thank you very much. I hope you'll consider the resolution and give us an extension, and we'll complete this. And I promise you, I'll get the memorandum of understanding done, and I'll get the memorandum of agreement after that. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions of Mr. Hurst? Thank you.
Thank you.
We had one final individual that has signed up, was Mr. David Apple. Did you want to come forward, sir? And please restate your name, address, and district, please.
My name is Dave Appel. I'm a resident, live on Ramble Street, right off Park Avenue, first house off the corner. I'm here in opposition of the request to extend this, okay? Few things, and I'm going to try to stay inside my 3-minute allotment. The conversation is gotten off of what the true issue really is at heart, okay? The true issue was, what was the best use of that property, okay? And now it's become a debate over whether or not an amphitheater is going to be good for Hot Springs or not. The project's wonderful. The location is awful, okay? That's the problem with this here, okay? And I want to talk about something Mr. Wilson touched on. I got a list here. It might go back and forth. When we had the original meeting, I watched it on the Zoom. I was not in town. And at the end of the meeting, Mr. Mayor, you kind of summed the whole thing up about how you first heard about the project. You were kind of a little bit, I don't know if I like it enough. Then you spoke with the Walmart folks, and they kind of, they knew a lot. You were impressed with what they knew. And that's great, and I understand that, okay? And it's like the guy that says, oh man, my back hurts. My back hurts. So what do? You go to the doctor, because he knows more about that, right? So he's going to tell you what to do, and then you're going to do what he says. But there's a flaw in that thinking, okay? In that what Mr. Lane, right? If I pronounce your name properly, Mr. Lane, right? his interests are not the same. Your interest is what's best for the city. Your interest isn't what's best for the business of operating an AMP. Okay, so his opinion, although very valuable, shouldn't be the determining factor that, okay, yeah, I can do this and it's going to be great and wonderful. We're still back to the original issue of what is the best use for that majestic property. They talked about market surveys that they did coming from 500-mile radius, this, that. There are numerous alternative sites that you could build this wonderful project in Hot Springs, okay? There's no reason in the world they can't just like take it to another spot. And we can all be behind it, we can all love it, we can bend over backwards to accommodate their needs, to get it up and running as fast as it can. It's just in the wrong spot. All right, so let's talk about the urgency of this, how the city kind of moves. There's like a tremendous sense of urgency, like we need to do something. The city's not broke, right? We're not laying off cops, firemen, we can't make the payroll. We have plenty of money. The tax revenues are up, everything's going great. Plant flowers, cut the grass. That place will serve as a reminder to everyone of the importance of preservation. And in the future, as the city improves, the city gets better. I hear a report from the Chamber of Commerce. They tell us how everything was wonderful and the new things that are going on happening. I hear a report from the city manager about great things that are happening. As the city improves, the crime is down, the tax revenue is up. You got the new ball fields, you got downtown development. Hot Springs, Arkansas is on the radar of every coast-to-coast development company out there, including the Wilson Group. This is not our only option for that spot, okay? And it's like we're glued to this now. We're handcuffed by this contract. All right, a lot of things happened, including the value. You know, we talked about increased cost. Mr. Wilson was saying how now it's going to be a little bit more money. We're trying to figure out what to do. Okay, the value of land's gone up too in the last year. All right, so that's something that needs if the city decides that they want to renegotiate with this place, with this project on that location, there needs to be a significant increase in the price. Yeah, the city's on the improve. Like I said, it's heard the advertisement there's an advertisement on the radio for hiring police. They were talking about how the crime rate is way down, way down. Let's talk about some of the things that I heard. We want to know everything about the project, right? The Walmart folks want to know everything about the project that we can do. Mr. Wilson doesn't want to spend $1,100 to drill a core to take a sample. So they don't know anything about how they want to put a stage into where they want to do this. They're not even close to knowing what they want to do as far as design goes. The Walton people talked about design and it fitting in with Hot Springs, okay? And Mr. Wilson's costs are all based on a scaled down amp. So we talked about costs and what it was, and we scaled down the amp and we took how many square feet we had and we adjusted that. And all my cost figures are based on something that the Waltons say they don't want to build. Right?
David, can you kind of summarize, please?
Yeah, okay. I'll try to summarize. We ask it for, if you have a homeowner, okay, a homeowner goes to the city and asks for something, and he's not experienced, okay? So the city has a little bit of leeway. Okay, we were supposed to do this, and maybe he didn't get this done on time. We're going to be a little flexible, and we're going to accommodate him. These guys are it's a major developer, okay? And the guy's coming to you asking you for a do-over. That's what they're asking for, a do-over. They had time. They had every opportunity to get done what they needed to get done. And if they misjudged the market or they misjudged the task at hand, well, then shame on you. Time is up, all right? And now the city's interests tonight are to put the city's best interests in front of us, not the developer's story about, I had COVID relief. If you need COVID relief, call the SBA. All right, the state's got all kinds of relief programs for that, okay?
David, I'm going to have to ask you to, you have one last statement, please.
I have one last statement. All right, here's my last statement. My time is up. I'm not going to ask you for a do-over, okay? Mr. Wilson's time is up. He doesn't get a do-over either. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. That completes the list of people who have signed up to speak. Was there anybody else who would like to address the board? Thank you. So we can bring back individuals who have spoken to us and ask some questions now if we so choose. We can have discussion amongst directors. Personally, I'd like to have Mr. Wilson come back up, please. One of the things that I like to, or I appreciate about the board and what I try to live my life and be consistent about is to be consistent amongst those who have put forth projects and have run into some challenges. We had another entity had put forth a project on this property, and they ran out of time. In fact, they kind of exceeded. I think we met maybe even 3 or 4 months after the last extension, and we pulled it from them. We weren't going to grant them any further extension. They didn't in my opinion, they didn't appear to have moved the needle much at all in their development of the project. They used COVID as a major issue as well. You have done apparently what I've seen and heard tonight, an enormous amount of effort in building out, or at least doing an analysis on this project, and so I'm very, very appreciative of that. But at the same time, you know, April 16th is next week. What is your assessment of where you're at? Is this a done deal? Is this going to be built? What are your final concerns in you pulling the trigger and say, we're going to do this? You got a market analysis that says it's all great and wonderful. You've got all this other work you've done, a couple $100,000 worth of expenditures during the due diligence. So where are we at?
No, it's not a done deal. And I'd like to qualify that. The marketing analysis and the market assessment provided us, and us collectively being not just my company and our team, but the operator, the potentiality of operators, and the city of Hot Springs, with the detail that was lacking in the vision that we had for this project in order to determine its viability and feasibility and profitability, which all leads to, and in fact is the definition, or one definition, of success. And of course, I said this before and I'll say it again, we are not, my company, we are not going to be involved in something that's second rate. We're not going to be involved in something anywhere. Even though I'm from Hot Springs and I certainly have a great deal of pride in this, it doesn't matter. If this were, we were developing a Sam's in Austin, Texas, we'd have the same attitude. This project, though, we're not handed standard criteria for a Walgreens. And then we pass it off to civil engineering to do site planning, and then architect to design and give us construction plans, and we permit it and we finance it and we build it and turn it over to Walgreens to operate. This isn't that simple. This is not existent. We've had to utilize some detail from the AMP in order to assist us in costing this project, but it's not exact. It's not, I mentioned our last tabulation was about 18.8. That has about a 10% contingency, which in the construction world is a little high. Typically 3 to 5% is an average contingency that you would apply to the cost of a project. So with certainty, I can't tell you this is 100% going to come to fruition. No, I cannot. What I can tell you is that the data that's necessary to prove its feasibility and successability, if there were such a word, is proven. It's proven to us. It brought and convinced the Walton Arts Center of everything they needed to know to operate this. And they additionally have convinced us as well, I might add, 4 other operating companies in the country, the largest in the world, have also were involved. We interviewed, and they were absolutely convinced. They did their own marketing assessment, convinced of the success of this project. We have a great deal of civil engineering data already. We have more to go. This is a very lengthy, timely process. When can I say to you, Mayor, we're going to pull this one over the finish line within this first 6 months. We're not going to need 9 months to determine can this happen, but we are going to need 6, which is why in our asking, we're essentially at a 6 plus 3. We need, how much of that 6 months will we need? I certainly think we'll need at least half, maybe a little bit more. But that's about how much more time we need before I can determine, and Peter Lane can determine, that we are, without a doubt, going to close and construct this facility.
Well, you indicated that you didn't want to be involved in a second-tier operation. Mr. Lane indicated he didn't want to be involved in a second-tier operation. What is it that would cause it to be a second-tier operation?
I think Peter could answer that question better than I could. But I will say this. I've had people contact me and say, well, why don't you just go up there and get the city to approve some really nice portability, some tinting and some portable structures that could be affixed like modular buildings and that sort of thing, and put up a big nice stage like they do at Oaklawn that's portable in nature, and go hire somebody to book some entertainment and let that be it. We're not the least bit interested in doing that. That is not successful.
What I'm getting at is you're controlling it.
I am.
It's up to you to make it top tier, and Mr. Lane's not going to be involved in anything that's not top tier. You guys make it top tier. So what is it that's preventing this thing from being done?
There's nothing preventing it from being top tier. In fact, that's what we're asking for the time for.
Well, you said it wasn't a done deal. So what is it? What is the extra time? Well, what would prevent you from moving forward?
Well, if we don't have any more time, we can't get in. We can't complete our.
Let's set time aside. What would prevent you from moving forward?
Absent the extension, nothing.
Well,
what's your definition of moving forward?
Well, like I said, getting a done deal. I mean, you were
being able to tell you that this is a done deal. Is that what you mean by moving forward?
The same thing I asked Mr. Lane. You know, you're presenting it that the first question I asked you, you said no, it's not a done deal. And I'm trying to figure out what is it that makes it not a done deal.
Well, we don't have the design completed, and we won't have the design completed unless
But the fact that the design is not having the right design, I mean, I guess maybe I'm not explaining myself clearly. You said it's not a done deal.
Can I help?
If it's only time, it's a done deal then? If it's only time?
I'm going to let Mr. Lane step in.
I think that.
Will you please speak into the mic?
I built a few of these, and there's things you don't know about the property until you do your due diligence. So I think if we did all this work and realized we could only put 2,000 people on the site, that would be a problem. And I would say we wouldn't do it at that point. So I think we've figured out a framework, and all of our studies show that we want to build around 5,000 cap. If for some reason we can't get 5,000 on that site in a way that makes it great for audiences and super for artists and ability to take care of our team, that would probably be something where we would step back and go, this isn't going to work. So there may be some building things that you could discover on the site. I built at the Walmart AMP, and there were 3 caverns in the last renovation. We drilled 127 piers, of which 10 of them went into a void. We added huge amounts of money to get that fixed, but had it been worse, we probably would have had to abandon the project at some point. We did the due diligence before to drill. I think when I hear, I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm going to try, you want to do your homework, and you want to make sure that the site has all the pieces to be able to execute, to get it to that design level, to that first tier level. So, if it's going to cost some number higher than Mr. Wilson and his team can bear to do because they found a cavern and it's going to cost $10 million to fill the hole, that I would imagine could be an issue on your end.
You have earnest money of $100,000 that you can pull today, tomorrow morning, or whatever. In your letter requesting an extension, you ask for some additional time and that the earnest money not be forfeited or until October, some date in October, whatever. But will become non-refundable on October 20th. If you get an extension and you haven't paid for anything related to that extension, I think we've, as a board, at least from my chair, I think then we're treating you differently than the previous developer, because we did not give them an extension. Second extension. They had their initial period, they had their extension, and then we weren't able or were unwilling to provide an extension. My thought is maybe I have more confidence in you and Mr. Lane than you guys have confidence in the project. But I think that if we're going to offer an extension, that the initial $100,000 be actually the city's at this time, and then if it closes, that $100,000 is taken off of the purchase price, and then you put a new $100,000 in escrow, and so you close and you have $200,000 taken off the escrow price. So do you have that confidence, Mr. Wilson?
First, let me speak to the fact that you identified that there was a previous developer that made an offer to the city. I'm not aware of that. I know you had a broker that came to the city that asked the city to enter into some fashion of an agreement, which nobody seems to be able to produce an actual contract, if you will, that essentially the city agreed to take the property off the market while the broker tried to go out and find investors or people or developers to back the project and actually bring the project to fruition, do all of the heavy lifting, including the time, talent, and treasure, while he essentially did nothing other than created the concept. His so-called agreement expired. It's my understanding that he provided no updates to you during that 6-month period, which I provided 3, which was not required of me to do. But I wanted to keep the board apprised of our progress. And some 90 days or so after the expiration of that so-called agreement, he then asked for an extension. He had no earnest money deposit up, nor did you ask him for any. So if you're asking me if I'm willing to make our deposit become non-refundable tonight, the answer is no, I'm not. With all due respect, we're not far enough along in the due diligence of this property in order for me to make a logical decision to do that. I have offered to, if you give me the additional at the end of 6 months, you give me the extension, we'll make it non-refundable at that point in time.
Well, your letter here that you authored and dated March 14th, you know, and you spent the better part of 40 minutes or so providing detailed explanation of each activity that you conducted in your due diligence, you know, suggests that you've done a tremendous amount of work. You've got to be much farther along in your due diligence phase than what you may be giving yourself credit for. Any other directors have a comment or question? Or do we?
Yes, sir.
Pardon? Director Garcia?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask if you've asked for this extension to October, but plus 90 days. Is that something that you would reconsider to have it all within 2022?
Make sure I understand your question, Director Garcia. So you're asking, would I shorten the 90-day extension periods? Because if I recall, I don't have the letter in front. If I recall, that 90 days took us to January 20th of 23. And so you're asking, would I reduce that amount of time so that we could close effectively in 2022, December, late December? So if we, excuse me for a moment, let me check my calendar. So December, the last business day of December would be December 30. That's a Friday. That would reduce our time by some 21 days. I don't see any problem with that. Here again, I want to reiterate that my confidence level is that we'll have a great degree of our due diligence completed in the 6-month period. I would really hope that we wouldn't need the 90 days, but I think the loss of the 21 on that end of it, I think, is doable.
And I heard you say earlier that, you know, you thought that be able, by the dates that's in the current contract, because as I understand it, what's before us tonight is only the question about an extension of our current contract. And you said you were wrong. And I really respect that after seeing all the work that you've done, that you would come before us and say that, because we have been under different circumstances in the last few years than we would call normal. And we've seen, as a result, that prices and even getting information. I know just within the city, we've had trouble getting automobiles, materials, even water meters. So I do not see anything based on the work you've done and the circumstances. And you did keep us in your communications. The city manager sent board members all the communications, and previously the people that had been discussing this with the board, I was quite surprised to find out that nothing had been done at the time of the board meeting, and you've kept us apprised every step of the way. And I don't see anything unreasonable in your request based on everything that I'm aware of. But I really would like to see all of this completed this year.
Any additional questions?
I have, it's not so much question as just a little bit of discussion. I do want to say that I appreciate, the handout and the work that you've done with parking, in my district, parking, traffic, noise. Those were the three. And this seems like some reasonable accommodation for parking that hopefully, based on what you've said with the environmental components, that there will not be any negative impact to the neighborhood there. Also, I wish we had more information, or could, I know it's not possible at this time, of what perhaps the future of that intersection is. That is a huge issue. Traveling through downtown, that's one of the things so many people talk about. I see people go the wrong way on those little streets all the time right there. Reworking that, I think, is something that we've all talked about once or twice, if not 100 times. So that's, personally, that's something that's really interesting and appealing, and I do appreciate, anything that's going to be working with the highway department and the city and private interest is not going to be fast. I wish we had a little more information about what that might look like, but I know that's just not possible at this time. But I do appreciate that that's something that you guys are looking at. With respect to the time, personally, I'm a little bit conflicted, just because one of the comments I do get from the public is we have people coming in presenting as our saviors often. And I don't like to see that, and I don't like to hear that, but it does happen. A lot of people come in with big ideas and they disappear. But kind of to Pat's point and Karen's as well, I think it is different. Yes, we did not allow an extension before, but the circumstances, I do think, were different. You've invested a lot of money and time. And I do respect that, but I will say, of all of us who go home tonight, I will probably be the one with the most phone calls, regardless of what I say. So yeah, I like I said, I'm a little bit conflicted about it, but I do just want to state for the record that I do feel like you've listened to some of the biggest concerns and are addressing them already, even though you don't have the property in hand. The fact that you're looking to invest in other property to handle those issues is appreciated.
Now, you didn't ask the question, but I'd like to comment about the engineering and design for the tri-section of Whittington, Park Avenue, and Central Avenue. A few months ago, I had a conversation with the city manager about pre-review process before planning, pre-review for the planners. And then I assembled our team, and we had a Zoom conference with the City Planning Commission and several department heads. I think there were 9 on that Zoom. And so this was discussed a bit. So clearly that's something that once that the city is going to be involved in that design phase, but even, of course, the ultimate design of it will go before the Planning Commission, obviously. So just so you know, that's not something our engineers just design and draw up and think this looks good and this will work, and then we jump out there and build it. I don't mean to be elementary about it, but that's not, you're going to have your opportunity to see that. That also will be coming in the public forum via the City Planning Commission.
Any further, Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, July the 20th, this property will have been off the market, per se, for a year. I mean, with your contract, quite frankly, I anticipated a closing before now. Listened to your comments tonight. Do you think it's possible if we did a 6-month extension and had part of that earnest money non-refundable, whatever percentage, 25% or 50% non-refundable at the end of the 1-year period? Is that something that you could live with? Because you're going to know a lot more in 90 days than you know now. And that gets back to Pat's comment about when do you feel comfortable saying this is going to happen?
I'm not texting, I'm looking at my calendar.
Oh, I get it, I get it.
So bear with me for a moment, please.
I believe the contract was dated July the 20th. And so this year, July 20th of 22 will be a year that the property's been off the market.
So what percent are you proposing?
I don't know. I'll throw that open.
Would
to the board.
25% make the board happy? To be non-refundable at July 20th given though that the extension we're requesting tonight is granted? Is that essentially what you're referring to?
Director Garcia asked if we could shorten that to December 30th, so it could be closed in this year and be reflected this year.
I answered yes to that. I'm comfortable with that, so that's a given. So is your question, if we made $25,000 non-refundable as of July 20, is that your question?
I'm tossing that out to the other directors, but that was my question to you.
That seems reasonable.
Any other comments on that point?
Is it, I was not on the board when the previous applicants were putting forth their proposal. Did they put money up?
There was never a contract.
There was never a contract.
There was never
It was
a contract.
just talk. And so the current, do we have any other people that have been coming forward? Because I know Mr. Wilson came forward before the other contract was terminated. Do we have other people that are asking?
We never had a contract.
She's asking if there's anybody today coming forward.
So, the difference in what we've done and what we've done with Mr. Wilson is the prior companies responded to an RFP. And the board basically charged the city manager and city attorney to negotiate a contract. We never got to that contract. There was one evening that the developer did bring me a check, but I did not feel comfortable taking that at 6:30 at night in my office. So did not keep that check. As those negotiations are ended, basically after a Zoom meeting that was held with the board, those negotiations stopped, and we were basically prepared to go out for a third RFP. And that is when we received the additional letter from Mr. Wilson. He had contacted us prior to that. But we got that offer. I can't remember the exact date, but we brought that to the board at the next meeting after I had received that, and that is what got us here today. But it is kind of different because the prior was responding to an RFP. Now, Mr. Duchelle, who was part of that project, has contacted me and said that he could probably get that group back together. He's not interested in doing another RFP, but if that was something we wanted to entertain, that he could probably get his group back together. But again, that was really two different things that we're talking about through the RFP process and a bona fide offer that we had received that we'd brought.
Any other parties express interest with you?
No, sir.
Hotels?
I don't believe I've had any communication from them since the RFP process. And since that time, I know that they have
Oh, yeah.
secured the medical arts. So, but I really don't know, can't answer.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this is Karen Garcia. I would like to make a motion to amend this resolution to be completed by December 30th. And if we don't have the contract by the date for the 1-year anniversary in July of 2022, that 25% of the earnest money that has been paid by Mr. Wilson's company be forfeited.
Before there's a second to that, Director Garcia, I want to point out that your question to Mr. Wilson was whether or not he would be willing to close on December 30th. That means
Yeah.
the due diligence has to end December 15th,
Yes,
because your contract says.
That's a good point. That's a good.
yes, yes.
I understand.
Can we I'm sorry, I misstated the dates,
No.
but that we would close and due diligence end by the 15th and the closing by the 30th.
Before there's a second, could I ask for clarification, Rick? 25,000 non-refundable deposit on July the 20th, and as you have offered, the balance of the earnest money would become non-refundable on October 20th, 22. Would that still be in place for the $75,000?
Yes.
Okay. With that caveat, I would second Director Garcia's motion if it's time for that.
Mayor, you have a motion and a second. I would like to clarify it for the board's discussion. So in reading section 1 of your resolution that's on the floor at the moment, it states that the due diligence review is given and granted until January the 20th, 2023. So that would be changed to December 15 of 2022. Then section 2, which deals with the $100,000 earnest money, would remain in escrow. And 25% of that, if it's not been closed by then, 25% of that would be released to the city on July the 20th, 2022, and the remainder of it released to the city on October 20, 2022, unless it's been closed prior to that time, which it goes
Unless we cancel the contract, and that 75% would be
yes,
refunded.
yes, thank you.
That is.
Which also, just for discussion purposes, which also is true of July 20.
Yes, if the contract's canceled
If
prior
the-
to
yeah.
July 20th, the 25,000 would not become.
All the other
non-refundable.
provisions of the contract would remain in place.
Everybody understand the motion? So we have a motion by Director Garcia. We got a second by Director Trustee. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Director Weatherford.
Yes.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted.
Mayor, the ordinance has, the motion on the floor has been amended.
I'm sorry. Thank
So if there's,
we got it.
we're not through.
Yeah.
The motion on the floor has been
I
amended.
misspoke. We amended the motion.
That was to
on,
amend the
and now we
motion?
have to approve the motion as amended. So I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
No, we'll just,
What?
Just call the roll.
you'll just need to call the roll as amended.
Okay.
But I just wanted to point out that what will now happen is I'll prepare a document for Mr. Hurst to review. Once we have reached an agreement on the form and content, we'll submit that to the mayor and to Mr. Wilson.
Okay. Thank you. So we just approved the amendment. Now we're going to approve the ordinance as amended. Call the roll.
Got a point of clarity. Did you intend, though, I assume that you intend that all of the, whatever the deposit is taken, the earnest money, it'll all be applied to the purchase price?
At closing.
Absolutely.
Just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Please call the roll.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance as amended is adopted.
Yes, sir.
We have one final action item of the evening, and that will be to consider ordinance 022-14. And I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules for read by title only.
So move.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. please read by title.
Mayor, this is ordinance O-22-14, an ordinance amending ordinance number 5712, establishing a quorum for the Historic District Commission, declaring an emergency, and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion and second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Jones, seconded by Director Trustee. And do we have
Yeah,
Mr.
Mayor.
Albright will provide the staff
Mayor,
report.
I'll try to address this. This is a housekeeping matter of sorts. Board of Directors had previously adopted ordinance number 5712 that reorganized the Hot Springs Historic District Commission, which reduced the number of the total membership from 7 to 5. In doing so, it did not address the requisite quorum for the reduced number. The purpose of this ordinance would be to set the quorum for the commission to be the majority of the entire membership. The entire membership being 5, quorum means 3. Yes, sir.
Any questions?
Just a question. I saw that 3 of 5. Does that need to be in there if we expand the commission back to 7? If we decrease the commission to 3, would we have to amend this then?
Fair question. The reason I would like to keep it in there is to remind us if we do it.
Okay. All right. I thought majority covered it, but I see your point. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions of Mr. Albright? There's nobody in the audience to ask. They're all gone except staff.
Everybody gone.
Law enforcement.
Does Denny
So,
want to talk about it?
They got out of here.
any further discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Director Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye.
Mayor, there is an emergency clause associated with this ordinance. It's found in Section 2, which I'll read in its entirety. Section 2, emergency clause is hereby found and determined that an emergency exists, and this ordinance being immediately necessary shall be in full force and effect from and after the date of adoption. That concludes the reading of the emergency clause. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
Got a motion, we got a second?
Second.
Second by Director Dobbs Smith. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, pose same
Aye.
sign. Emergency clause is adopted. That completes our action items of the evening, and I want to thank the board members for allowing me to allow our speakers to fully explain their proposal. I think that, you know, when we have a rule of 3 minutes, this matter might require a work session, you know, and so it's important for us to be able to hear fully from the developer, Mr. Lane, and their real estate executive. So I thank you for that, and therefore I gave Mr. Apple some extra time too, because they had probably more than an hour, and he had about 7 minutes or so. So thank you
I think you handled that fairly
that.
well.
Yes, you did.
But now we're into Board of Directors items for discussion. Any item for discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Director Garcia?
First, I would like to thank the city management and our IT department for adding on to the first screen of the city's website information regarding the STRs. And as it's my understanding that all the renewals are due this month, I've had a influx of calls and emails regarding STRs, and specifically regarding the density, which we don't have covered specifically in our ordinance, but we do have regarding the character of a neighborhood. And I've had some complaints that the density is changing the character of their neighborhood. And I was just wondering if maybe after all the license renewal and is completed this month, if we might have included in a work session next month update on the STRs sometime.
Director Garcia, I think after May 1st, we'll have a much better idea. So I agree with your comments that it may be an appropriate time to review that and see where we are and where we need to go.
Thank you very much.
We'll let you know that as of now, we have 185 approved STR licenses in residential zones in the city. And right at, Lance, I think it's around 320 total approvals for all zones.
So the 500 cap appears to be sufficient for this?
Depends on what comes in between now and May 1st.
And that operating, right? We may have more than that number actually operating, and that might be an issue.
Director Weatherford? you have any
I
comments?
just want to mention that a couple weekends ago when Lance and I were at Municipal League, that was one of the topics that they talked about. And matter of fact, Lance sat in the three-man panel about STR. And I feel, and I think Lance will verify, I think the whole state's looking at us, STR-wise, you know, because that was mentioned several times that I mean, we're kind of setting the standard, I think, for STR ordinances and what's going on. So,
I spoke to the Government Affairs Committee for the Hot Springs Village this week, and their general manager, Kelly Hale, they've got our ordinance. They've gone through it. They're looking at it, and I've heard that from several of our peers throughout the state.
Any further questions or comments? Director Jones?
Mayor, I done rolled so much the weekend. Everybody who didn't go roll, they missed a treat with Miss Tina the other night. But I would like to make a motion that we adjourn for the night.
We have a motion. We need a second.
second.
I heard it from Director Weatherford. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Good meeting. Thank you all.